Welcome to the Parkland Report. Joining me in this edition, Frank Gallo, choir director for the Chamber Singers here at Parkland College, and Chris Engberg, music faculty here at Parkland. Welcome to the Parkland Report.
Thank you.
Frank, tell me a little bit about how you managed to get yourself to Parkland College.
Well, there was an opening last summer, and I recently moved to the area, and I applied for the position, and I'm really glad to be here.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about your background as a choir director.
Well, I've kind of lived all over the place. I'm originally from Pittsburgh via, Connecticut and Jersey and Chicago and even as far as Hungary. Lived abroad for a while and studied there, and now my wife and I moved to the area, and I'm here.
Well, we're happy to have you. Chris, you've been music faculty here at Parkland for a long time. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your involvement with the Chamber Singers here at Parkland.
Well, I am the accompanist, and I have been on and off through the years. There have been others as well, but.
Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen the evolution of the choirs here and the singing groups here at Parkland.
Well, we have one choir now. We used to have a larger choir that was more community oriented. Mm-hmm. The group we have now is auditioned, although I think. Yes. Yeah, it is auditioned, okay. And so it's a little bit more select group. They perform more a cappella work. I really have enjoyed watching what Frank's doing with the group. It's, I think, evolving, and he's challenging them with really interesting literature.
So as an accompanist, like, how do you work? I mean, you just go whatever direction the choir is in? I mean, does it change what you do and how you prepare?
Well, it depends on the director. Other directors that I've worked with, I would be there for every rehearsal, and I would be playing parts, helping learn that sort of thing, and just I try to be as invisible as possible as an accompanist, because the idea is that you don't interfere with mm-hmm. the rehearsal. You're just there to, support it. Mm-hmm. And with Dr. Gallo, he likes working with the group himself. I think he has something near perfect pitch or very strong relative pitch, and so he doesn't even need the piano to get them started. It's really fun to watch. But I come in to rehearse for concerts.
Excellent, very good. Frank, tell me a little bit about your philosophy of singing and working with singing groups.
First, I think it's important actually to get away from the piano. Mm-hmm. I'm a pianist first myself, but my background is really in singing and choral conducting. That's where my degrees are in. And I really believe that relying on the piano to give pitches and things, if you don't need to, is kind of going to hamper the learning process. We should really be focusing on developing, a choral tone and a blend by comparing yourself, your voice, to other voices, not something like an apples and oranges, mm-hmm. your voice to a piano. As a result of that, I think the students maybe progress maybe a little faster because they have to show a sense of independence. Mm-hmm. When you rely on the piano, from me or from Chris or whomever, you're dependent on an instrument mm-hmm. instead of an independent singer. Mm-hmm.
So, and then the idea, of course, within an ensemble or group is that you are working to balance out all of the sound that is around you and come up with a sound that's pretty pure, right? I mean, because you want the
Absolutely.
choir to have a sort of a unified sound, not
Sure.
25 individual voices.
Absolutely, and it also a technique that I use is having, as much as I can with time constraints, having all of the singers sing all of the parts. So they're not only singing their own, but they're singing the other ones, so they get a sense of, the importance, or if they're the melody, for example, or are they a support part. And maybe some parts are a little more challenging than others, and they should know, where their ears need to go.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about what your feeling is. I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of interest in singing, especially people in singing competitions and
Sure.
Best of Talent, whatever those programs are. So talk to me a little bit about what your impression is of younger people now as they approach. Is singing still as important? Do people seem still as excited about performing?
I think that depends on a lot of things. I think the answer is yes. I think a lot of people are interested in singing, but I think it really depends on how they were brought up, what their family values are. Also, I think their past experiences, what they had in high school. If they came from a really strong choral program in the school systems, then yeah, they're going to want to keep singing. I've visited about 6 or 7 high schools in the area for recruitment purposes for Parkland, and there's a wide array of choral programs in the immediate area. Some much stronger than others. However, I think overwhelmingly people want to make music, and they definitely want to listen to music. And if we can bridge that gap there, we're going to continue to expand the program here at Parkland.
Chris, it used to be that almost every child took piano. I mean, I know I made all my children do it. Do you find that there's still a strong interest in music or learning an instrument?
There is. I think the challenges these days is that there are so many distractions from that, from my point of view. A lot of my piano students, my younger ones that I have outside of Parkland, they tend to be involved with many different activities, so it's a balancing act for them. But there is that strong desire. And to kind of get back to the choir thing, there's the social aspect as well that I think is really important to a lot of singers.
So I think in some cases, I mean, for people who are amateur, just love music, love to perform, love to sing, love to play, but are not as proficient as both of you are, I think in some cases that seems to be like, oh, I could never attain that degree of perfection, and so I should stop doing it altogether. But I think that's a real mistake.
Well,
because
I will tell students there is no such thing as being perfect in music. It's all interpretation.
Yeah.
And you do what you do with what you have and what your imagination is, and you just own it, and then you're making music.
You talked a little bit about sort of the difference in sort of approach that Frank has to some sort of setting up the piece and the a cappella stuff. I mean, are you beginning to see that evolution in terms of what is acceptable as performance music now?
Well, I'm a pianist, so I tend to look at it from that point of view. One of the things that I'm still trying to get my mind wrapped around is that not everything has to be memorized anymore. There was a fairly stringent aspect in terms of what performance was supposed to be on piano, and it seems to have loosened up a little bit. I'm still trying to get my mind wrapped around that part of it. But
well, there's always been an interesting interpretive quality to all performance, I suppose, and that's why we have so many different versions of many different events. So excited about what's the most exciting piece that you're working with the singers right now?
Well, I'm actually really excited that we're doing a piece by Palestrina, who is a really important choral composer in the Renaissance. And that's a really challenging piece for the students. We're doing it's called Sicut Cervus. It's in Latin. It was written like 500 years ago. But it's interesting because I had a conversation with them just on Tuesday regarding it. When I passed it out, many didn't really like it, and it was such a foreign piece to them. And now most of them think it's their favorite piece,
right,
because they see how beautiful it is. They can wrap their head around how to perform it, and they're getting better at it.
Yeah.
So I think that one right now is very exciting for all of us because they've attained a mastery or approaching a mastery of a very famous piece that's been around for a long time.
Well, you can't get any better than that. Thank you both for being here on the Parkland Report.
Thank you.
We'll be back after this short break. Well, welcome back to the Parkland Report. Joining me in this segment, Jonathan Beckett, Director of the Wind Ensemble here at Parkland College, and Vincent Trouth, longtime adjunct faculty member and local radio personality in the music world. Welcome to the Parkland Report. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Jonathan, tell me a little bit about what it's like to be directing the Wind Ensemble and maybe some of the other ensembles that we have here on campus.
Sure. Well, for me, it's been a wonderful experience. I'm starting my third year as Director of the Wind Ensemble. Just to explain what the Wind Ensemble is and how it's different from the other performing instrumental ensembles that we have here at Parkland, almost everybody knows their high school band, what a high school band is. So essentially, the concert band is that here at Parkland, and that's what Larry Stoner is the director of. It's a large ensemble of many musicians who play all kinds of different instruments. The Wind Ensemble is much like that, except it's a much smaller version. Technically, it could be classified as a chamber ensemble because there's only one person per part. So, for instance, if you have flutes and clarinets and trumpets, and in your high school band, you're going to have maybe a dozen or so on each one of those instruments, doubling a lot of parts. The difference in the Wind Ensemble is that there's one player per each part. So, in other words, I have 1, 2, or 3 flute players, like a first and second flute player. I'll have maybe four clarinet players, first, second, third, and fourth clarinet parts. 3 or 4 trumpet players to cover each. So everybody's part is very important, and that presents its own unique challenges and the way that I approach doing that ensemble. Now, Rodney Miller is the director of the Parkland Symphony Orchestra, and it's a symphony orchestra like most people are familiar with anywhere that you see a symphony orchestra. So we have these 3 large ensembles as part of the program here at Parkland, and all 3 of these ensembles are available for the community, which means that any community member can audition and sign up for this, pay a nominal fee, and have the opportunity to participate in one of these ensembles. So primarily, I think all 3 of these ensembles are driven by community membership. They are also available for credit here at Parkland, so you can take it as a 4-credit course as well.
So do you find you've got a good selection of talent, both in terms of the credit and the community membership? Is there a lot of strong interest in the ensemble?
Absolutely, yes. I'm very fortunate to have some wonderful musicians who are dedicated and perform at a very high level. So I'm very, very fortunate to have that experience and that opportunity.
Vincent, talk to me a little bit about your experience of the music education program here at Parkland College, both in terms of the appreciation, and I know you teach the piano class. How have you seen that sort of grow and change and evolve over the years that you've been working?
If we address the class piano situation, I've been here almost 20 years, and for 18 of those 20 years we operated on a Yamaha system, electronic keyboards. I have my keyboard at the front of the room and all these controls, and I have a headset and microphones, and each student has their own electronic keyboard with headsets. So it's like one-on-one instruction, but it's also group instruction at the same time. And I'm fortunate enough to have earned my degrees in the teaching of piano in the group setting. That's what my degrees actually are, and so I get to use them. And then a couple years ago, we replaced the Yamaha system with a brand new system of Casios, which sounds like toys, but Casio makes high-end equipment, and we were fortunate enough to get a really good deal on a brand new room full of these. There's 16 student seats, and then mine, of course, a couple of years ago from the company whose name escapes me over in Bloomington Normal. So we have these wonderful instruments, and pardon me. So the program, in terms of the enrollment, varies depending on the time of day. We frequently offer the class piano 1 on a Monday and Wednesday at 12 and at 1, and then we'll offer another section later on in the day, usually on a Tuesday, Thursday. For a while we had a Thursday night class from 6 to 7 to 9, then 6 to 8, and so the times vary. The newish afternoon classes are designed to be available for dual credit or high school students. So on occasion we've had 1 or 2 of them go through. The course, the class piano, both 1 and 2, starting with 1 of course, are open to both music majors and the public, and so that's the challenge in teaching the class, is trying to navigate those who know something about music and those who are completely clueless and starting from scratch, and that sort of thing. So the programs, we've been around for a while. Chris Engberg, who was here earlier, she's taught in the lab before. Dr. Rubel, who runs the music program, uses that piano lab to teach music theory and ear training. It's great. Years ago we had computers hooked up to them. We don't nowadays. There's a separate computer music lab for them to do their ear training and music theory work in there. So, and then when it comes to the music appreciation classes, back in the day, which makes me sound old, but I'm not that old, I guess. It was always classroom instruction, which I love dearly. It's to me, it's like a live radio show. It's like you come to the room, and I'm going to play you music that you should hear, and that you're going to learn about. These are the iconic pieces. These are the players. These are the eras. These are the styles. This is what makes this music work. And nowadays as well, we have online instruction of music appreciation, which initially I thought, how on earth do you do that? But it's actually quite simple. You set up a course of study and you give them directives. You say, read this, listen to these, answer these questions, do these projects, contribute to these discussion topics, and away you go. And the response has been, by the students, has been really, really good.
So you talked about technology, and it's interesting to think about, the notion of an electronic piano and pure, but I mean, I know there are like top professional players who swear by and will use electric pianos. And then in thinking about the music appreciation, I was astonished a couple of years ago, just messing around on the internet, and came across all of these master classes by top operatic singers. Joan Sutherland, Luciano Pavarotti,
Right.
Alfredo Kraus, and it was incredible because it was such an opportunity to see these things, and it was so easy to access, right? So it's interesting that for music appreciation, if you think about now, the technology really lends itself to being able to show a wide variety of types of music and performances, and give a little background about the history of the culture that it comes from. So in many ways, it really does help the experience for the students.
It was surprising at first, at least to me. I mean, others are like, oh, sure, no problem, teach online. It's like, okay. At times I feel like a glorified typist because there's a lot of typing involved with messages and emails, but ultimately, to me, it's about the music. Whether it's about the appreciation class, whether it's about class piano, it's always about the music. Now, back in the day when we had classroom instruction without all the technology, without the cameras overhead and the video and all this, taught the class strictly on musical terms, which was very challenging to some, but I think from where I sat and sit now, that's the way it should be in many ways, because it's all about sound. It's the sound we're after. However, in its defense, the technology is what the students are used to, and so when I put up a video of Chuck Berry doing a duck walk across the floor, they get it.
Yeah.
They really, really get it.
Jonathan, talk to me a little bit about the preparation for the wind ensemble in terms of the type of music. For example, do you find that folks are aware of the corpus of work that you're interested in performing? Are you bringing in new work? How do you go about sort of choosing things for the students to play?
Well, I always ask the band if there's anything that they want to play, because I want them to be happy and satisfied. And if anything, I mean, it could be a general topic or it could be specific pieces. But my personal favorites, I like what's called the American Songbook, which is the great composers of like Broadway shows and movie musicals and things like that. In fact, our upcoming concert this Sunday, April 29th at 3 p.m. here in the Minor Theater, we're going to be playing a couple of those, Can by Cole Porter, and Porgy and Bess by George Gershwin. So I always love to incorporate those types of things. Audiences love that. I think it's, you know, the sonorities are familiar to most people, and they're very satisfying to play. One of my personal favorites too is playing orchestral transcriptions, actually. So great orchestral works, symphonic type works, whether they be overtures or excerpts, or, you know, usually shorter, you know, shorter scale works. And I've always been a fan of that sort of thing. My personal experience is jazz. We do a little bit of things like that. We have a piece coming up this Sunday as well, New York 1927, which kind of touches on some of the older, more traditional sounding syncopated jazz. It's what I like. You know, obviously you teach what you know.
Sure.
But it's also, I also consult the band as well, and I also like to try to keep the audience in mind as far as what's gonna be successful.
I was listening to some Gershwin the other day, and I was struck by the fact that what seemed at the time so strange and out there and new and modern has become such a sort of core recognizable sound. And I was struck as I was listening to it of the fact, you know, by the fact that it was, you know, rooted in this whole other corpus of music that had just evolved into that interpretation, and thought, well, that's what music is, right? I mean, it's a sound that changes. We hear it a little differently. We strike a note a little differently. We go in a slightly different direction, but you're sort of rooted in that great sort of music tradition.
Yes, I like that a lot. I like the fact that it's all American, and you know, George Gershwin was not necessarily making a lot of friends when he was incorporating jazz, which was considered by many people to be a lesser form of music, that it was, you know, entertainment. But he made it into art music, and bringing those factors together, I think, makes him, you know, one of the most iconic composers of all time, classically and in other ways as well.
Well, I think one of the great things about Parkland is that we had this great conversation about music, and we're talking about Palestrina, and we're talking about Gershwin, and we're talking about American musical, and I guess it's living proof that music continues to be central and important and valuable. And I thank you both for your contribution to that and for the work that you do here at Parkland College.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And thanks
It's a
for being
pleasure.
here.
You're welcome.
That's it for this edition of Parkland Report. We'll see you back here next time.